The Hunger. Chapter 1. The mountains were a blinding sea of white, stretching endlessly before Jeb Jackson in February 1847. At just 15, Jeb's legs ached as he struggled to pull the sled through the knee-deep snow. Beside him, William Russell, his breath forming heavy clouds in the frozen air, trudged forward, their clothes barely clinging to their emaciated bodies. The Sierra Nevada winter showed no mercy. If this opening hits you, the full book's on Amazon. Links in the description. In the distance, smoke rose lazily from a cluster of makeshift cabins, barely visible against the backdrop of the towering snowdrifts. The sled creaked under its weight as they pressed on. Jeb didn't have to look to know what was on it. The lifeless arm dangling over the side was enough. Jeb thought bitterly, the enormity of their isolation weighing heavily on his mind. It felt like the end of the world. William's voice broke the silence, rough and raw.
You know the reeds? They've already gone and boiled the oxhide off their roof. Now they ain't got nowhere to stay.
Jeb glanced toward the tree line, where dark shapes flitted between the firs. A low growl carried on the wind. Something was watching them, following them.
I can't take them in.
William continued, his voice thick with resignation.
I already got more than enough mouths than we could feed. And my little ones have already taken to boiling little bits of the rug.
He gave a humorless laugh, but the despair behind it was unmistakable.
You know, things is just awful forlorn.
Jeb heard him, but something else tugged at his mind. A soft whisper, like the wind itself was speaking to him. It rose and fell in his ears, the words too foreign to understand, but too insistent to ignore. It wasn't until William spoke again that Jeb realized the whispering had been in Latin.
You all right, son?
William asked, eyeing him warily. Jeb shook his head, trying to clear it.
It's nothing.
But it wasn't nothing. It was growing louder now, the whispering, gnawing at the edges of his mind, unraveling his thoughts. They reached the darker, deeper part of the woods. The spot they'd already agreed was far enough away from camp. Jeb's eyes drifted to the cold, ravaged blue hands and patches of hair sticking out of the snow, remnants from their previous trips. William pulled back the canvas on the sled. Underneath lay an old man, his beard frozen into icicles, his face a sickening shade of blue. Jeb's eyes caught on something, a spiral-shaped ring, cold and ornate, still gripping the man's finger. The old man joined the others. They dumped him on a pile of bodies, his limbs stiff, his eyes vacant. A pair of women's feet stuck out from the snow nearby, their toes blackened and twisted with frostbite. Jeb couldn't look away from the gruesome scene. He felt a deep horror, but also something worse, a gnawing hunger in the pit of his stomach. William stared down at the bodies, lost in thought.
It just seems an awful shame. What with so many going without, and all this here.
Jeb's stomach turned, but William's eyes met his, steadfast, resolute.
Jeb, we'd be respectful like, and we'd ensure that nobody was partaking of their own kin, and you know, just nothing savage.
For a moment, Jeb thought about it. Just a moment. The whispering seemed to urge him on, louder now, filling his mind with thoughts he didn't want to have. Then he shook his head, stepping back.
think we ought to be heading back now.
Yeah.
William didn't move.
Just think about it. 'Cause, there ain't nobody coming for us. This is the only way.
The whispering grew deafening, like a chorus of voices speaking all at once. "Jeb," they hissed. "Jeb."
We'll see what Pop has to say about it.
Jeb turned, starting back toward the camp, desperate to escape the voices. He hadn't taken more than a few steps when he heard the unmistakable click of a pistol being cocked. His heart froze. He turned slowly. William stood there, pistol aimed at him, his hand trembling. Something wild flickered in the man's eyes, a madness born from hunger and desperation.
Jeb! Jeb? Jeb, you ain't gonna say nothing!
William rasped, his voice barely audible over the wind.
It's the only way!
Jeb stared at the man who had been a friend to his father, now teetering on the edge of sanity. Fear gripped him, but before he could speak, a guttural snarl ripped through the air. A wolf. In an instant, the animal lunged, its massive, stark white body slamming into William, knocking him to the ground. It was on him before Jeb could even move, snarling, snapping, tearing at his flesh. William screamed, his voice shredding the air as the wolf ripped into him. Jeb stared, momentarily stunned. Then he grabbed the knife at his belt, yanked it free, and took a step forward. Instantly realizing the small blade would be of no use, he tossed it aside, and his gaze darted to the pistol lying in the snow. His hands shook as he reached for it, his fingers barely wrapping around the cold metal. He fired a shot into the air. The sound echoed through the mountains, causing the wolf to look up. It growled, the sound reverberating in Jeb's chest. The wolf was enormous, standing motionless, blood dripping from its jaws, its icy, sharp eyes locked onto Jeb's, staring unblinking as if it could see through to his very soul. He fired another shot, and the wolf turned and trotted away, leaving a trail of blood-red prints in the snow. The whispering returned, louder than before, filling Jeb's mind until it was all he could hear. The Latin phrases gnawed at his sanity, tempting him with something he could not grasp. William lay in the snow, gasping for breath, his neck ripped open and his leg a torn mess of muscle and sinew. His eyes pleaded with Jeb. The weight of the situation pressed down on Jeb, and he felt his heart race with a mix of fear and desperation. He wanted to help, to save him. But as he glanced around the stark white landscape, the reality of their situation settled like a cold shroud. The dead silence echoed William's agony, and for a fleeting moment, Jeb could think of nothing but the impossibility of their escape. As the whispered voices began to creep back into his mind, Jeb's resolve wavered. The pain of hunger inside him twisted into something darker, but he fought against it, wanting to cling to the remnants of his humanity. Slowly he dropped to his knees beside William, the whispering pounding in his ears. His gaze fell on William's shredded leg, and he reached out. Massive, falling snowflakes masked the two humans as Jeb tore a piece of flesh from William's leg. The whispers stabbed at Jeb, relentless, until a sudden calmness washed over him, his pain vanishing. He stared at the twisted piece of meat in his hand. He murmured, a fleeting glimmer of realization flickering in his eyes, that those were not his words. In that moment, the whispers finally ceased, and the bloody flesh in his hands was about to change everything. Chapter 2 doesn't get any kinder.